And then your Saturday night can be a bit of a bitch.
Saturday night is the loneliest night in the week.
Well, it doesn't have to be. Load up Toxic Radio every Saturday night for the heavy metal happy hour with the one and only Fishman.
I know that, dude.
There will be interviews, ticket giveaways, a little bit of banter with Toxic Mike, and of course great metal from the 80s all the way through today. Starts at 7 p.m., runs until Fish says it's over.
Everyone get out!
Catch it only on Toxic Radio. Don't play it safe. Play it toxic. Hey guys, dating life gone pretty shitty?
I find you so creepy, I think you should have to walk around with a bell around your neck.
Finding yourself getting a little desperate for some female companionship?
Alexa, tell me you love me.
Hell no. You disgust me.
What you need is to upgrade your style right now. The Toxic Store's got exactly what you need. Pick up some stylish gear featuring Deviant Gamer, Toxic Radio, and the Heavy Metal Happy Hour.
Oh, yeah!
You can find the store through the Toxic Radio app or toxicradio.net. Get in the game.
Do I make you horny, baby?
Get yourself a little love.
That guy's getting boobies. Yeah, he is.
Toxic Radio and the Toxic Store. Don't buy it safe. Buy it toxic.
Master, dinner is served. Igor, it's not that I don't appreciate the effort, but you know I prefer my meals uncooked. And how many times have I told you about using garlic? Yes, Master. Forgive me, Master. Please. Bite into Paradelphia. Thursday nights at 8, only on Toxic Radio. Paradelphia, because what if it's all true?
Welcome to Week 16 Wire2Wire Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Gene Walzak, and we have an amazing show lined up for you today. To my right, I have the man, the myth, the legend, Scholastic Shally, rocking the new Wire2Wire hoodie. To my left, I have College Kittrell, Kent State's own, Cleveland's own, LeBron fan. Hopefully they go down tonight. Boo. We got a ton today. We're going to start with some UFC. We're going to talk about the MLB Hall of Fame. JT REALMUTO, great news for the Phillies. The Eagles head coach hiring. They like to hire them the day after our show. Nick Sirianni, new Eagles head coach. And we're also going to have a special guest, Joe Santoliquito, the guy who had the Carson Wentz report before anyone. A lot of that. We'll get into that in a minute when we have Joe on. We're going to talk about Carson Wentz, how salvageable is he? And then, obviously, we'll do a recap of the NFL divisional round and what happened in Green Bay. And then we'll end it up with our You Gotta Be Kidding Me. So we got an action-packed show, and we got to get started ASAP. We're going to talk about Conor McGregor and what happened on that pay-per-view and then what happens next. A lot of people had Conor McGregor. 91% of bettors had Conor McGregor winning that fight. I had him winning that fight. I just didn't think it would be – I thought it was going to be a close fight. I was worried about Dustin. And, yeah, I mean, he came out on fire, looked like he was going to stop Dustin early. And then all of a sudden, Dustin, those leg kicks, caught him with a couple lefts, couple rights after those leg kicks in the second round. And before you knew it, Conor was out. What were your thoughts on the fight, Shally? Like, what did you think about that specific fight?
I was shocked a little bit the way it ended it. Again, it's a fight. Dustin's a capable striker. I mean, you get caught, you get caught. I mean, like we all kind of said, Dustin, I thought Conor was going to win. Not that Dustin's not good. I just thought he was one of the few people that were better than Dustin. Conor won the first round, all three scorecards, rocked him. Poirier admitted that after the fight, too. He said he was hurt pretty bad. And then, to his credit, he came out, he changed his game plan up in the second round, started kicking Conor's lead leg. And, I mean, that was the difference in the fight. Took a lot of mobility away from Conor. That is one thing that he is world class in. He gets in, he gets out. His footwork and his movement is very good. And he kind of became, I don't want to say a sitting target, but, it was a lot easier for Dustin to hit him in the second round, and he caught him, and he finished him. I mean, all the credit in the world to him. It's a good fight. I mean, again, I think some people were hoping that was going to be like a 5-round slugfest, and I didn't ever see it playing out that way. They're just both too good as strikers. I thought somebody was going to get finished. So it was a good fight. I mean, I know where to get to it a little bit. I would assume we're going to see it again. I
actually think that that fight was it was a good fight. It was, but I just wanted more. I wanted more. I wanted to get to the third round. I had a third round finish in my head beforehand. I thought it would, and I just didn't expect. Conor's legs are huge. Bill, you made a perfect point. When Dustin took a couple kicks at his legs and slowed his footwork down, it was a huge difference. Cottrell, how did you see it?
I mean, the one thing that was kind of crazy about that fight to me was that, Conor won the first round. I'm not going to say it was easy, but I mean, everyone who was watching knew that Conor won the round. And what I didn't realize, like, as I was watching it, like, live, was that those leg kicks were giving him that much damage. And, like, you heard, Daniel Cormier talking about, Conor needs to start checking those leg kicks, and, that's going to come down to hurt him later on in the fight. But the fact that, Conor was still striking with so much ease, and, he was getting to Dustin and then getting out, it just didn't seem like the leg kicks were going to play a huge factor, but then they did immediately. It was like, the first round ended, and I guess at that point, Conor really started feeling them. And I feel like with that fight, it wasn't as much as ring rust. It was more so just like those leg kicks really did him in, and that stopped his ability to move around, and he just couldn't fight how he wanted to because he couldn't move how he wanted to.
That's a fair point. I mean, I honestly, can you throw Chris Hackney's post back on the wire line? Chris Hackney on the wire line basically just said he lost to Khabib, lost to Mayweather, beat an uninterested fake cowboy, and then got the biz from a pro fighter, go fight Jake Paul. All right, so let me just be clear. I don't agree 100% with what Hackney's saying, but what I will say is, Conor's 3-4 in his last 7. And a lot of people after that fight, I don't agree, but a lot of people after that fight were saying this might be the end of Conor McGregor.
No.
I don't think so either.
Look at his last 7. Like, he's had everybody he's fought has been top 5 in the world.
At least the losses have.
Yeah, the
wins haven't been. The Cerrone win was not really.
All right, but if Donald Cerrone is your weakest fight out of 7, like, you're fighting good people.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I don't agree with that.
And if everyone is going to be on board with this whole thing of ring rust, I mean, we would have saw him look a little bit worse. Even if Cowboy isn't what he used to be, you would have saw him have a little bit more trouble in that fight. I mean, he went out there and fought. It was basically a flawless victory. So if ring rust is really that real, we would have saw something different from that fight.
Yeah, it was Mortal Kombat style. Great call, Control. I watched that fight, and McGregor looked everything McGregor looks like in that first round. He looked dominant. After that, he just, those leg kicks did a toll on him. And I don't know how much more I can say that. So the thing I want to ask next is what's next for Conor? And for me, I think they're obviously going to put another Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor fight to rematch that fight. I still don't agree with that, but that's what I think they're going to do.
Again, I've read a couple things with people that are, semi-close to Dana. I guess, they're not going to put it, saying it's coming out of his mouth and put it on the record because contracts have to be signed and so forth and so on. I don't think you can make fights here with the top 3 or 4 guys without holes being in any of the matchups. You're not going to make everybody happy. I think logically, you would run Conor and Poirier back round 3. If you even want to make that for the belt, you could if Khabib's really not coming back. And then you have, then I would put Chandler versus Gaethje, win the 2 winners of those. Or you could have those be, 2 qualifying matches. Both winners of those 2 fight the following not following pay-per-view, but the next time they fight for the belt.
That following pay-per-view would be like old school.
It would be. That'd be great.
I want that. Maybe the same night. No, I'm kidding. But if you like into the whole UFC 1, UFC 2.
Yeah, there's dudes fought 3 times a night.
On ESPN Plus, man. That is so fun.
It's so funny and barbaric, but cool at the same time. There's nothing funnier ever than the guy who fought with one boxing glove on.
I would love to see a full training camp for Conor, and I would love to see him fight Gamebred. You know, and I'll get into that for why in a second, because I wanted to talk about, do you like the new Conor McGregor? Like, what is your thoughts on the new Conor McGregor? What I mean by the new Conor McGregor, the respectful Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor is not talking smack the whole time. I used to want to pay, just like you said earlier, to watch just the interviews.
The
press conference.
The one thing that I will say with that is just the fact that Conor is, I mean, he's an older guy now, and so the fact that, you know, he's just essentially he's been humbled because he has more losses under his belt. And he's just more mature now. Like, I just think that obviously it's not as entertaining, but I don't think that has anything to do with necessarily his fighting style. I'm not saying that you were saying that, but this notion that he's just like soft or like a different fighter, he doesn't have like the heart. I just don't feel like that's the case with this Conor. Like, just because he has a slightly different personality, I think the fight in him is still there.
I agree. I don't think I think it has more to do with a lot of other things. I think he is a little bit older. I think he's a little bit wiser. You know, he does have a baby boy now. You know, and I don't know, you know, and with his, listen, you know, he's gotten in trouble a lot the last couple of years. I mean, he can't to some degree, he can't risk getting these like melees at press conferences and, you know, or throw chairs at buses and stuff like that. Like, he gets in trouble again, like that could be a deal breaker. So, again, I don't think it has anything to do with his fight. I mean, I think, or the way he fights, I just think he's just, you know, for lack of a better term, I think he's grown up a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if you see it a little bit with the third one, because I don't know if he does fight Dustin again. I do think Dustin was very respectful to the lead up in this, talking more about his journey, and he gave credit, like all the, you know, the credit in the world for beating him. You know, he just kept saying he was a different fighter, so forth and so on. I do think if, you know, he baits Conor a little bit with this, I do think you might see it again. You know, I don't think it changes the outcome of fights, but maybe it does. I mean, you know, Conor's probably the only person that can really answer that.
I think the cockiness for Conor really motivated him more, because if you talk that much, like, think of it this way, ready? If you talk that much smack before a fight, you can't lose. Like, the amount of smack he talked leading up to that Jose Aldo fight, you can't lose that fight.
But I mean,
you can't do it.
He did it in the fight to Khabib, and he lost 3 of the 4 rounds. So, like,
that's fair, but that's the last fight that he did it in. He really didn't do it in the Cowboy fight,
right?
And
Cowboy was the first like peaceful Conor fight.
Yeah, but he still dominated though. So like it's I mean, like, I see like both sides of it. It's like, I don't think it affects his fighting style, and I don't think it's necessarily in his head, but for us, it's definitely, you know, not as fun. Like, the build up isn't as fun.
Yeah. So another point I wanted to ask is, Dante put something up earlier, and I know we might not be able to put that back up on the wire line, but he said that Conor would not be able to beat Oliveri or Michael Chandler. I think you're absolutely out of your mind. I've been on Michael Chandler for 8 years, since his wars with Eddie Alvarez over in Bellator. Like, I watched. Nobody's been on Michael Chandler. I won a lot of money on Michael Chandler, and you guys seen the parlay I put up. I was all over Michael Chandler, and I'm telling you that you're out of your mind. Conor will outstrike him, and it won't. And I don't think it will be that close. So I think that if you put Conor in the ring with Michael Chandler, I think you're gonna see. Like, I really think the ring rust is a lot more to do with it than you think. Like, you said the ring rust, and then you're saying he's not in the same league as an elite fighter like Michael Chandler. I think that's silly. And I just want to be clear.
And even to add on to that, I think that the fact that we're like completely blown by the fact that Conor McGregor was, you know, striking, and he was giving Dustin all he could handle that first round. I mean, like, you were essentially, you know, 1 or 2 combos away from that fight ending in the first round and going Conor's way. And even Dustin said that after the fight. So it's not like Conor can't fight anymore and he was just, you know, way out of his league now. It was just, he got into a slugfest with the guy, and he got beat. Like, that's just what it came down to. Dustin's a great fighter, and we all, you know, said that before the fight. We just thought it was going to go the other way.
Like I said earlier, they run it back, and Conor dominates him, in my opinion. I think he prepares for it way better, and I think he dominates him.
I think the problem Dustin's going to run into at that point is, I don't think he can step in the cage with the same game plan he had for this fight and thinking it's going to work, which then, again, you get back to, all right, it's going to be strictly a, you know, striking game. And again, the first round, when he wasn't throwing kicks or doing anything, Conor, for lack of better terms, won that round easily. I think
Michael Chandler is not going to stand and bang with Conor. It'll be Khabib 2.0.
He's not.
No,
Khabib.
it won't.
He's not Khabib.
He's not Khabib. And I've watched this guy's entire career. He's not that skilled of a wrestler. Other people have tried to get in the ring and tackle McGregor and get him on the ground. And after the first time, I forget the guy he fought at 45. It was the early, it was the early fight. Aldo got canceled, and he fought a guy at last minute. Chad Mendes. After the Chad Mendes fight, he really worked on that part of his game.
And Chad Mendes is a way better wrestler than Michael Chandler is.
Correct. And then after that fight, he worked on his takedown defense. And since then, nobody outside of Khabib has taken him down. Don't you think that's the game plan? Don't you think Eddie was thinking about doing that? Eddie was a state champion wrestler.
Yeah,
it just didn't happen.
The only person that's given and Conor, and if you go back to the Khabib fight, that first round,
he did a great job.
He did a great job. He did. And that's Khabib. Khabib is, if you're gonna go by, if you're a judge off that, Khabib is the absolute standard for takedown. Michael Chandler is one way to win that fight, and it's to catch Conor, and if he doesn't, and again, that's not taking anything away from Chandler.
Chandler's a great fighter.
He's a great fighter. Yeah. I just don't think he's in the same class as I don't, we're gonna get into it in a second, but I mean, the proposed matchup for him, I don't think he gets past him. So,
Gaethje? I think that would be amazing.
Amazing fight. I think Gaethje wins that fight.
You might be right. I think that's a fight that it could headline, and I would be perfectly fine with that.
I'm fine with it. The one thing that I'm kind of confused about too is I don't know if you guys remember or even heard about it, but Dustin's comments right after the fight where he's like, I don't want to fight anymore. I just want to go back home. I don't want to do this or whatever. And then he was like, you know what? Maybe we'll run it back. And I don't know where Dustin's head is at. When it comes to fighting,
you want to know the truth?
I'll go ahead.
What?
The truth is, he knew he almost got stopped in that first round and doesn't want a second part of Conor. I'm telling you that right now.
I think it's that, and I think you got to remember 6 years ago, Conor was not Conor. So the lead up to the press for that fight, and the cameras and all that stuff, they were not there. And Eddie's even alluded to it. Eddie, they had those press conferences, and when they, then when it started really getting close to the fight, and they were like, "Hey, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this." And he's like, it's a lot. He's like, if you fight Conor, it is a lot of stuff you have to do outside of training that you're obligated to do that takes away from your training.
Yep.
And if it's, God forbid, if it's for the belt or something like that, the third one, it's going to be even crazier. Not to mention if it's late enough in the summer, depending on where they hold it, you might have fans. That's a totally different animal. Some guys don't like it. Khabib's like that. To his defense, he doesn't like the whole, the hoopla of it. He doesn't.
If you listen to Eddie's post-fight interviews and what he said after that fight concerning that fight, he's like, I completely went away from my game. I got caught up in the hype of everything that was going on with Conor. He's like, I can't believe I did that. I fell right into his game and I just stood there and let him punch me. And that was not the game plan, obviously. Eddie is a world-class coach, and Mark Henry. Oh my God, my names are going nuts today. But Eddie's got a world-class coach, and I'll tell you right now, that was not their game plan, obviously. Dante says Tony Ferguson versus Conor. That's the fight to make. Both have something to prove. I disagree. I don't agree with that. I think the fight's game bred versus Conor, and I hope you see the old Conor with the shit talk, and I hope it's at 170. But it's 9:15, so I got to move on a little bit. How about Chandler? Michael Chandler, dominant knockout win. And I hope you guys won a lot of money on Joanne Calderwood. I called that one 30-27 across the books. Dominated Jessica. There was no way she was losing that fight. That was free money. I maxed that one. Max that play. What did you guys think about the other two plays?
I thought Chandler was impressive. I'm not sure where Hooker really falls into everything now.
He doesn't.
The answer is he doesn't, but it's where doesn't he? I don't think he's a top 5 guy.
He's a gatekeeper.
That's exactly the term I was going to use. He's now going to become the gatekeeper at 155, which is fine. That dude's a banger, but he's just been through way too many wars, and he doesn't have that extra gear that some of these guys do. But I mean, I think your top 4 are pretty clear right now. Minus obviously Khabib. But Chandler looked really good. I mean, there's guys that come over in their first UFC fights, they wilt under it, and it's a different boat.
Didn't he look like Eminem coming out from 8 Mile? like this is my moment. I've had one moment. I got one shot. I know it sounds funny, but I'm dead serious. Like Michael Chandler has been waiting to get in the UFC for years. When Eddie Alvarez was just signing his contract with UFC, him and Chandler just fought their second time, and Eddie had beat him. Chandler beat Eddie the first time. Then Eddie went on to be the UFC champion.
Yep.
I need you to think about that. You're Michael Chandler in this big contract with Bellator. It was like this is my moment.
I think to some degree what helps, it was a godsend and blessing in disguise maybe was with there not being no fans there, was there not being the whole normal fight week. Yeah. Like he could come in and not.
Well, there's 11,000 fans. Abu Dhabi let fans in.
Yeah. I mean, but it's
not much.
Same.
Not like
not
a full.
Same, yeah.
Correct.
It's not a full Vegas thing.
No.
And if you put a Vegas card and you're fighting underneath Conor, that's a circus. I mean, that's a full blown on circus.
So especially MGM.
Yeah. So that might have been that probably helped him a little bit too. But listen, I mean, he was impressive. He went in and did what he had to do. He had to impress Dana. He had to look good doing it, and he did. And again, I mean, I can't see his next fight not being a big fight.
I was gonna say my two biggest question marks after the night was essentially gonna be who does he fight next, because I feel like obviously that was an impressive win and everything, but it's you don't want to move him into the title fight in his second fight, but at the same time the division is literally up for grabs, and your top contenders, Gaethje and then McGregor, they both lost their last fight. So it's what do you do with Chandler? And then the other question mark that I had was, Khabib said, right before the last event, when he had his meeting with Dana, and he was like, I'll see what these guys do at that event, and I'll potentially, make my decision after that.
Khabib's been on record saying that's not true. Just to be clear. I just want to say that, he just went on Twitter, Saturday before the fight. But he went on record saying that what Dana said wasn't true. Dana said he came out of that conversation with the feeling that Khabib wanted to be impressed by something that went on this weekend. I just want to be clear about that.
I just feel like with Khabib, if he was looking at those two guys, maybe I'll come back and fight one of them. I feel like he's looking at that now, why would I waste my time going back? I'd beat both of them easy.
He didn't beat Poirier easy. Poirier almost knocked him out. I mean, he beat Poirier stopped him in the third round.
Right.
But Poirier caught him.
I understand, but I don't think neither one of them put on the performance to make Khabib say I'm for sure coming back.
I read between the lines with that, and I think that was all about Conor. I mean, I think if Conor would have went in there and knocked Poirier out in the first round again, then Dana is begging whatever he's got to do to get him back in the cage with Conor.
I want to see that fight again.
I do.
I really don't. Everybody else does. I don't. There's so many other fights.
Not anymore.
Conor versus Gaethje, Conor versus Dustin 3, Conor versus Gamebred. There's a lot more fights I'd rather see Conor
fight. You gotta get off that Gamebred fight, dude.
Bro, it's the
not
fight.
Gonna happen.
It is the fight.
Happen.
That is the fight.
It's not gonna happen.
At 170, the bad mother effer
It's
belt.
not gonna happen.
All right, it's 9:20. We gotta move on. Any last comment on UFC?
No, I mean, now we're just waiting. I mean, I think they're going to do one of two things. I think they're going to do Dustin and Conor 3, Gaethje and Chandler, and either the two winners are going to fight for the belt, or Conor Dustin 3 is going to be for the belt, and the winner of Gaethje and Chandler is going to be the winner gets the title shot. I think that's what you're going to see.
That's fair,
and I'm fine with it. If it
Any
is.
final comments, Control?
I mean, it's just going to be interesting to see what Khabib's final decision is, and then how long Dana is going to let him just hold the belt hostage.
I'm not paying a pay-per-view for Khabib. I'll watch it. I'll stream it.
I don't think there's any shot Khabib comes back to fight Chandler.
I hope not.
It's just that's
Chandler's a wrestler though, so I guess that could be, but I just don't want to see it.
So is Gaethje.
Real quick, just MLB action.
Yeah.
The Hall of Fame. Nobody got in. Nobody.
Yeah.
Bonds last year eligibility. Clemens last year eligibility. I kind of agree that.
No. Next year.
Okay, so they have one more year.
They have one more year, but they're polling right around 60%. So for either one of them to get in, it would be the biggest jump ever their last year to get in. They're not getting in.
I'm glad.
I'm with you.
I'm glad.
The only person I think that has a right or a gripe is Schilling.
Schilling should get in.
I agree.
And I think the problem Schilling doesn't get in is his mouth. Just shut up for 2 years, you'd be in the Hall of Fame.
I agree. The only issue I have with it is there's a lot of people that got judged for doing bad things on the field, like while they were playing.
Yeah.
He's not one of those people.
Correct.
He's been a horse's ass since he's retired and what he's put on social media and so forth and so on. But I don't know how, like, the dude was an absolute gamer, has numbers that are better than a lot of people that are in the Hall of Fame, and you're now strictly holding him out over political views. Like, that is where I have a problem. If you want to keep Bonds and Clemens and, you know, A-Rod's on the ballot first year next year, so is David Ortiz. Yeah. You want to keep those guys out because you think they cheated, that's fine. I get it. That's an integrity of the game issue. What Schilling has said has nothing to do with baseball.
Yep.
Nothing.
I completely agree with you. Curt Schilling, one of the best postseason pitchers ever to play the game.
Ever.
And I think it's a crime that he's not in the Hall of Fame. I just was interested. Like, I really hate that they have this hidden vote. Like, that bothers me more than anything.
Me too.
Why? You just don't want people to yell at you? I don't know.
And for me too, like, even going back like
coward move.
Couple years, like the people who didn't, like the person who didn't vote for Jeter or didn't vote for Ken Griffey, like, you want to do that anonymously, and it's like, why don't you want that on record? Like, because you know you're not going about it the right way. And I understand you only get a certain amount of votes, but if a guy deserves a vote, like in your mind, if the guy deserves the vote, I think you should give it to him.
Bill, I know you have thoughts on this. I watched you hold back.
No, here's the thing. Before the age of social media, you know, it was always like I don't want to say cloak and dagger type thing, but it was always a secret. And, you know, it used to be a televised thing, and it was a big deal because you really never knew. Mm-hmm. Like, you didn't have pre-polling. Like, that's what I mean. If you really follow this stuff, 2 or 3 days before they make the announcement, if you pay attention enough, you know who's getting in.
Yeah, we talked about it before they even announced it.
Yeah. I mean, so it's not that big of a thing anymore. So there's a lot of 70 and 80-year-old guys that are completely old school that are, you know, part of the baseball writers that vote on these things, and they do things old school. To get back to the Jeter thing, you know, you know, I get it. Should Derek Jeter have been unanimous? Yeah, I guess. I have differing views on Jeter, but to put it in perspective, Griffey was a better player. He didn't go in unanimously. Willie Mays didn't go in unanimously. Like, they are both head and shoulders above better than Derek Jeter.
Right. I mean, even the thing with Griffey, though, like, I thought he should have also been unanimous.
Oh, I 100% agree. But they have this old, like, kind of like unspoken rule. Like, their big thing was, like, nobody ever gets into, like, the Hall of Fame with everybody agreeing. Like, they back in the day, they thought they gave it more, like, even more prestige.
Yeah, but it's a wrong thought.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
It's wrong.
I'm just explaining it to you.
I know. Hey, listen, I understand it. I think
right.
I think the listeners might know, but I understand it completely.
Yeah.
It's a joke. Griffey should have been friggin' unanimous across the board. Derek Jeter, I get it. Some people talked about him being an over-rated player. I don't agree with that notion, but
he's not.
But Griffey should have been.
It's a way different topic.
Griffey should have been 100%. I agree.
He's not overrated, but he's not.
It's great. Yeah,
what
New
people
York
make
media,
him be.
Yes, you're correct.
Agreed.
New York media makes.
But I mean, again,
Joseph Jefferson, get the sock in the Hall of Fame. I want the red sock too.
It gets real interesting next year because Schilling's petition to come off the ballot.
Yep.
He doesn't want to not be voted in again. He just wants to go right to the Veterans Committee because he thinks they're going to vote him in, and they probably will. So
he said it's the only vote he cares about.
And
the Veterans Committee, not the writers.
To some degree, I get it.
I do too.
There's players involved in that committee, and you know, I think he's going to get in right away. Next year is obviously the huge year. It's the last year for Bonds and Clemens. If they do not get in, they are not getting in from the committees.
No, so, I agree 100% with that. Because they've ruined so many people's careers because of what they did.
You have A-Rod and Ortiz on for the first time, so I'm very curious to see where their vote totals are. First, who?
A-Rod and Ortiz.
Oh, you mean first? Yeah, first voting. Yeah, they're not going to be first ballot Hall of Famers. And then me personally, I'm seeing if Scotty Rowland gets over the hump. I think he gets in next year.
I don't.
I do, but he is. I'll be happy to see him.
Has Scott Rowland ever garnered a first place MVP vote ever?
It doesn't matter.
I think it does.
If
you're not anywhere near the best in your game at any time,
he's debatably the best defensive third baseman ever. And if his offensive
Not anymore.
Offensive numbers.
Nolan Arenado's way better.
Look up their fielding percentages. You'll be surprised with what you find.
So fielding percentages has to do with errors. Nolan Arenado takes plays away. The next level stats will tell you that it's completely different.
Go YouTube Scott Rowland's highlights.
Scott Rowland was a Philly man. I followed him.
Scott Rowland is one of the best defensive third basemen ever. That is your argument right now is Rowland, Schmidt, and Brooks Robinson, and you can make a case for all three of them.
Okay.
He is no worse than the sixth best third baseman ever.
I'd like to make the argument for Omar Vizquel. And I get why he's not getting more of the vote, especially because he had more issues. Sorry. More issues off the field,
and that is what's keeping him out right now.
But I think his on the field,
I thought he was talking about a third baseman defensively. Sorry.
If he's not one, he's two defensively behind Ozzie. I mean that's your argument. That's your conversation. I mean. Not a good hitter. What helps him is his longevity. I mean, he played the game for 20 years, and he played at an elite defensive level. He had no drop-off whatsoever. Right. But again, his domestic violence stuff, he took a big jump 2 years ago, and then that happened last year, and he pretty much stalled. So again, it's
11 gloves is just mind-blowing, though. And I understand.
Shortstop? Yeah, it is.
I understand, but...
So speaking of baseball, let's talk about JT REALMUTO.
Thank God.
They finally got done. Signed JT. We can change the hashtag to signed.
Yes.
Signed JT.
Best catcher in baseball.
Correct. Yeah, and I'm kind of annoyed it took this long, and I hope that I'm sure he won't hold it against the organization. He signed a 5-year deal. But my question is, I know we're not in negotiation, but my question is, when do you think that offer was made? You think JT thought he overplayed his market and accepted less of an offer, or do you think that the Phillies moved up their offer? Do you think it was a little bit of both? Because that is what I don't know. That's what
I think it was a little bit of both. I think it was, McCann signing early with the Mets. I think hurt JT. The other team that was really rumored to begin it from the get-go was Toronto. I don't think JT ever wanted to move his family to Toronto or Canada and deal with what's going on.
I'm just kidding. Sorry, Toronto fans.
Jesus. Or deal with, that, with all the COVID issues going on right now. Atlanta scared me when their name came up a couple days ago.
You think Atlanta came up just to move up the price?
They could, and if that's why they did it, then they're smart. They should. I mean, if you don't, you're going to make a division rival pay more or possibly drive them out of the division. You don't have to see them 20 times a year. Why would you not? But listen, the only thing I will give the Phillies credit with, and you saw it play out this way with Harper, they never, for lack of a better terms, they didn't panic. I guess, again, and you kind of hit it on the head too. We don't know what was said in these negotiations. We don't know what JT was really telling the Phillies or where he said his position was. So they might have felt really comfortable all along. He's like, hey, I'm definitely coming back. Let's just figure out the numbers. We don't know what was said. So, but because the same thing happened with Harper. People were going crazy with Harper and thinking, we were going to lose him 3 or 4 different times. And then, you listen to the press conference and he was like, I told them 3 weeks ago I wanted to be here. We just had to figure out, all the, the details. So I don't know. I mean, maybe that's a little bit of credit to Middleton. I think this is a hard offseason to judge anybody by too, with COVID, the lack of revenue, lack of uncertainty with coming next year because we don't know when you're gonna let fans back in.
I don't care about the lack of revenue because other teams in baseball are spending money, and the Philadelphia Phillies have a commitment to this fan base. They have a commitment to everyone, and I think that's that's a lame duck excuse that John Middleton used.
I don't like it. We're a bigger market team. I think we're the 6th biggest market in the country. I'm with you, but it's also just as irresponsible to say that it didn't factor in at all. I don't want them leaning on it like it was their crutch, like they did, but it definitely matters.
Okay, well, JT REALMUTO is now Philly, and that's now a moot point. What do you think? Last question I'll ask on the Phillies. What do you think their odds are of winning the division this year?
Not good.
How about you, Cottrell?
I mean, I don't see them. I see Atlanta winning pretty.
I think second year with Girardi.
Pretty smooth.
I think getting Harper and RealMuto back, and I think hopefully we sign either Didi or Anderson Simmons.
Simmons is gone.
Simmons is gone already?
He signed last night 1 year with Minnesota for 10.5, which I would have loved to have him at. That's a good deal for them.
But to really just get into it, I really hope they sign Didi back and they have a shortstop on the roster that can hit the ball long. I think the Phillies have a good chance of winning the division.
I think they're a third or fourth place team right now within this division.
Well, then why? I guess we'll see. But
everybody in this division got better. Everybody got better. Atlanta's going to be healthy.
New York is going to be healthy. I think New York wins the division if the Phillies don't. I think Atlanta takes a step back.
Oof.
I do.
We might have to side bet that.
That's fine. We can. You guys bet on the Phillies rival? Wow.
I'm just telling you.
Just saying. All right, let's get into the Philadelphia Eagles. Philadelphia Eagles have a new head coach, Nick Sirianni. Last week we were talking about Josh McDaniels or Deuce Staley. And out of the blue, Thursday morning, the Philadelphia Eagles outsmarted everyone and got Nick Sirianni in as their head coach. So I don't know how I feel about it. And if I'd be lying to you. I don't want to sit here and lie to you and tell you that I know everything about Nick Sirianni. I don't. What I do know is the move is made to strengthen your position with Carson Wentz and fix Carson Wentz. That's what I believe. I don't believe that. I believe that takes Carson off the trade block. I believe that has Carson stay here longer. And I personally, just my personal opinion on it, I probably would have preferred McDaniels, but I'm not 100% against Sirianni. I would have been against Deuce because I said last week that if Deuce was hired, I think it would have been a nightmare situation.
I don't disagree with you on Deuce. I kind of said the same thing. I had a little different take on it. My biggest thing with Deuce is I did not want them to put Deuce in a situation to where he was going to be the fall guy. He's done too much for the organization. He's done too much for a lot of the guys in that locker room. So I'm glad it wasn't Deuce. I'm sad that Deuce is gone. I think it was a good move for him. Get to Detroit and take a little bump up in position wise and see what he can do up there. That's an interesting coaching staff up there now. So I'm with you, dude. I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you listen to Laurie and they said, they impressed him. This guy impressed from day one, from the first time they started talking to him. He said all the right things. They agreed on a lot of things across the board with Carson, with other personnel decisions. He didn't ask for any kind of personnel power, which I'm sure was a huge thing because Howie was probably, in the corner in the background cackling. So we'll see. I mean, listen, we were in the same boat 5 years ago when we hired Doug Peterson. So, I mean, that turned out okay.
Do you think that Philadelphia Eagles organization deserves a pass on the hire because of that? Because they have a history? Like every coach they've hired has made the playoffs within the first two seasons. Every coach that Jeffrey Lurie has hired has made the playoffs in the first two seasons.
I don't think you get a pass just for hiring a guy who, essentially was up under a guy who you guys let out the building. And I understand it was a head coaching job and it wasn't like you guys just said leave or anything like that. But for me, this hire just doesn't make too much sense. I mean, I guess I understand it if you're optimistic that he fixes Carson Wentz, but what has he done or who has he really helped out to make you think that he's going to come in and save and resurrect Carson Wentz besides work with the guy who he looked good under?
Well, to be clear,
that's a little unfair.
He's coached for three different organizations that were top 10 in offense. So I don't know how much he has to do with each one of them, but it's everywhere he's been has been a prolific offense. So I don't.
And yeah, I mean, to your point on top of that as well, at Indy, he did it with three different quarterbacks. Obviously with Andrew Luck, you wouldn't bat your eye at that. I mean that dude was a stud. He had a top 12 offense with Jacoby Brissett, and then he had a top 10 offense this year with Rivers, who can't throw the ball 30 yards. Again, there's going to be the Frank Reich factor. I mean, but he did call plays. Reich had final say, but He was always there putting the game plan together. There was times during the games where he let him call a play. So, call plays. So, that he's not going to be out of his element there. I've watched some videos of him. He's a high energy guy. The guys, everybody I've seen him interact with on the Colts and different videos, they all seem to like him. I mean, they seem to be joking around with him. I think he's gonna be good. I mean, again, it's the big factor is it's going to come down to like Gene said. I'm assuming now Carson's staying here. We don't know that. People are saying he requested a trade, but he never really requested a trade. They haven't said anything publicly. He hasn't even talked since the end of the season. So if he is staying here, I mean that's job number one. I mean, it's got to be develop an offense around the strengths of Carson Wentz, and you're looking at a healthy offensive line, hopefully, and again, I think we're drafting a wide receiver in the first round. So I mean, we'll see. I mean,
which I'm happy with.
I'm fine with it.
Outsider's perspective, Control. I kind of want your opinion on this. Nick Sirianni's hired as the Eagles head coach. They said something specifically about the quarterbacks coach that they hired is known Jalen Hurts since he was 4 years old. I don't think that matters. I really don't. But outsider's perspective, how do you think this move goes? I know you said you didn't understand it, but how do you think this move goes? And in being a Browns fan, watching the Philadelphia Eagles, what is your thought process and what is your take when you watch the Eagles? Do you think Carson Wentz can be fixed? Do you think that?
Absolutely. I mean, Carson Wentz is a talented quarterback, and I don't think he necessarily has problems. I think it was just, the team around him wasn't built to succeed, and the fact that, you didn't have great play calls. I mean, I think everyone who watches the Eagles at all knows the fact that, Doug Peterson needed to hire an OC, and I think that would have essentially fixed the problem. So I don't necessarily think that it's all Carson's fault. Of course, he had room for improvement, but the real fact is that, I don't think this guy, Nick Sirianni, I just don't know if I'm as confident in him as you guys are. Like I said, I understand the optimism, but I just don't see why, you would be that confident. I'm not saying he's going to be a bad coach, but I don't see why you're that confident in him to, get Carson Wentz back to the level that we're used to seeing him be.
And that's the most important thing, is getting Carson Wentz back to that. I feel like
what makes you like that confident in him when it comes to that?
What I've seen with my eyes. And here's my take on Carson Wentz. And like, this is what I'll get into more than anything. Carson Wentz has much respect for Frank Wright and John DeFilippo. He worked very, very well with them. When they left, it was essentially a ticking time bomb for their organization. Mm-hmm. I can't understand or know the relationship Doug had or what Doug did or what Mike Rowe did with Carson. What I'm saying is, you gave that guy all that money. You have to give him the benefit of the doubt and a new coaching staff and a new offensive system to see if he can learn it. If the problems with Carson Wentz were, he doesn't work hard, he doesn't try, that'd be one thing. That's not what I'm dealing with. What I'm dealing with is somebody that works too hard, somebody that's trying to undermine the coach. That's fine. If you don't agree with the coach or don't believe in him, I understand that. I don't have an issue with that. I really 100% believe that Carson Wentz needs to be the quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, and a different system, a different design. He looks a million times better, period. Bill, what's your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, it's, I don't want to say, there's just nothing in me that tells me that Jalen Hurts will be a better quarterback than Carson. I think a lot of things, again, it was kind of like a chain reaction. A lot of things went wrong at the same time. You had a bunch of injuries. You had receivers that couldn't win or couldn't get open consistently. You had him get knocked down every third drop back, which is just an insane pace. And then on top of that, you had him not trusting it and not playing confidently, not believing what he sees. So, if they're gonna turn this around, they're gonna have a successful year next year. I think he has to be the guy under center.
Well, I got somebody on the line that was first on this. He was first about the report. He was the guy that mentioned the Philadelphia Eagles locker room issues with Carson Wentz way before anyone else did. And, you know, he got crushed for it. And to be honest with you, I think a lot of the city owes him an apology because he has a lot of this stuff right internally. So I have Joe Santoliquito on the line. Joe, Ring Magazine, Philly Voice. The guy is one of the nicest guys I've talked to on the phone. Joe, what's going on, buddy? How are you?
Hey, good, G.
Thanks for joining us. So one of the questions what we were just talking about was the Eagles' hire of Nick Sirianni and what we think that hire was for. We think that the Eagles hired Joe, and I think we all agree, as a way to try to fix Carson Wentz. Now, it's very obvious that with the Jeff McClain report that just came out recently, it brought to light your report. So you've become the most popular person in the city in the last month or 2 weeks. So I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on the hire of Nick Sirianni, and then I guess we'll ask a couple more questions about the Carson Wentz situation and you know how you came to, because I read the report maybe 15, 16 times. So I'm gonna pause there. What do you think about the hire of Nick Sirianni?
Well, this is going to be kind of weird, Gene, because right now I don't have an opinion. I'm still trying to process everything. I'll tell you this. I have an opinion on the staff.
Okay.
I think it's almost like it's like a frat house. He's hiring all his drinking buddies from the frat house. I mean, he seems like they seem like all of his pals. These seem to be friendship hires. I don't know the capabilities of some of these guys. With the exception of the guy he hires, the OC, who did have his issues with the Los Angeles Chargers. You know, I think maybe I'm still kind of taking a wait-and-see approach, is because from what I'm told from different people that I know in the league, and I hear good things about this Nick Sirianni, but I hear affable, high energy, go-getter, approachable, all that stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second. Aren't these a lot of the same qualities of the previous guy? The guy that led this organization to its only Super Bowl ever. And they got rid of him. You know, so if his approach was an approach of Doug Peterson's was very much approach of, you know, old school NFL in the sense that he'll let the players police themselves. He treats men like men. The interesting word that Jeff Lurie liked to use quite a bit in reference to the previous guy to Doug, the beloved Chip Kelly, was emotional intelligence, which I believe is something also Doug Peterson possessed. And so you have all these qualities in a coach. And again, he let players take ownership. He let players have input. And, you know, you let players have input, you have all this stuff. And the word that keeps coming back to me, a couple words that keep coming back to me, that he was too loose with a particular player. We both know who that. We all know who that is. And he gave that particular player way too much rope, which in a kind of a sense screwed himself, screwed Doug Peterson. So who's to say this guy won't make that same mistake? I can tell you for a fact, I could tell you right off the bat why Deuce Staley's not the head coach of this team.
Because he didn't want Carson.
Because if you, I'm sorry,
he didn't want Carson. I mean, that's clearly why, in my opinion. Do you disagree with that?
Well, I don't know exactly about that, but I do know this. If you remember, I did a story last year, around this time actually last year. The Eagles and the New Orleans Saints, by the way, they still remain this. They're the only two teams in the NFL now in over 20 years that have not hired, and the operative word here is hired, an African-American head coach, and an OC or a DC. And I use the word hired because um, Ray Rhodes, and I believe their DC then, who right now escapes me. They were the last two African American hires the Eagles had, and what's his name was Todd Bowles was promoted after Warren fired. Todd was promoted to DC. Todd was not hired as a DC. You have that cooking there, and part of the reason why Staley wasn't elevated was because he, quote unquote, coached too hard. He was actually even warned about it, which I know for a fact through two very well-placed, high reliable sources within the Eagles organization. That is one of the reasons why why Deuce Staley was not. He was interviewed, and they gave him his respect about interviewed, and maybe they took a look at him. But part of the reason why Deuce Staley is not the new head coach of the Philadelphia Eagles is because of that, because he coaches hard. And the room that he coached loved being coached hard. They loved being pushed. They loved being challenged. But we're finding out, obviously, there's some very important key individual that still has apparently a lot of sway with the Philadelphia Eagles that pushes back again. We all know that's questionable.
This was a Carson Wentz hire. This was exactly what that was. And I agree with you. Deuce Staley got a lot of play. But one of the things that they said about Deuce was he did not like the way the organization babied Carson. He did not like the way that he just wanted more accountability for Carson Wentz. And Joe, I'm going to get back to your report because your report now, I'm serious when I say this. You could read the Jeff McClain report that's going all over around, and it's a great report, but you can read that report now and then just edit the dates and put Joe Santoliquito, and that's the report I just read. I read that same report. Accountability was one thing that you mentioned. Another thing that you mentioned was he just tries to change their plays often. Jeff McClain said he changed the plans often. Also, he can complicate 2+2. He complicates everything. He's pushback. Frank Wright and John DeFilippo pull him in. All those things that you said in your report, I mean, they couldn't be more accurate. Now, the only other side of that report that I wanted to get your opinion on is my opinion. And my opinion is I don't necessarily know that they made the wrong decision by letting go Doug. I also don't necessarily know that they're making the wrong decision keeping Carson. I've been pro Carson since he's got to Philadelphia. I'm not saying you weren't, because your report, a lot of people don't read the whole report. They read just what they want to read, and they skim through it, and they hear Carson's a bad teammate, and he just won he was about to be the MVP. He didn't win the MVP, but he had an MVP season, and they heard that, and they were just like, oh, Joe's a bad guy. I can't believe he's saying this about our quarterback. What I read in that report was a little bit of Carson didn't respect the opinions of Mike Rowe. He bullied Mike Rowe, and he didn't respect the opinions of Doug Peterson because he felt like he was a better quarterback and understood more, but he respected Frank Wright. He respected him, and they came from the same religious background, and he respected him. So by giving them, Carson at least, another coach, you can kind of really see where that comes from. You can kind of really see, if Carson still has issues and accountability issues, then I think that you're going to know right away what side of this coin you should have been on. And my final comment I'll make before I spin it back over to you is when you look at this Philadelphia Eagles organization, okay, I think they put Carson in such a no-win situation. The most liked guy in the locker room, Deuce Staley, they didn't give him the job. They fired Doug Peterson, who was so lax and let men be men is what the quote was. And, they held their own accountability. Carson lost the locker room. And it's going to take a real lot for him to regain the trust of those players, knowing that he got the coach fired, which everyone knows this, and that Deuce Staley is not the head coach now because of that. So, Joe, I'd like to hear your comments on that.
I think you're spot on. I think there's... let's just say it, let's put it this way. I think there's some inquiries about those very things that you mentioned, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Won't go into any more detail than that. I think you're very, very right on with a lot of things. things that continue to resurface. People, they look at the mechanics, they look at this, they look at that. The bottom line, again, is the human nature aspect of things. And the human nature aspect of it is that if I like you, I'm going to play for you. If I like you, I'm going to want to deal with you. If I like you, I'm going to go out for you. I'm going to go out a little bit harder maybe for you than I would somebody else. You saw the difference. I don't care what anybody says. There was a difference when Jalen Hurts was on that field as opposed to Carson Wentz being on that field. We saw a collaboration. We saw people coming up. And all you had to do was see on the sidelines, people coming up and talking to Hurts and dealing with Hurts and giving Hurts feedback, as opposed to, and how simple it was, but it makes me cringe to say it because it was so blatant. Wentz would come to a sideline. He would pick up his iPad or whatever the hell it is. He'd be by himself. No one would come by his side. No one would say anything. Now, I do also know this for stone cold fact. Nate Sudfeld and he are close. They're buddies. And for whatever friendship or ally he had in Press Taylor, they were pals, and then somehow, some way, that is a relationship that went askew this past season. Because, talk about crossing lines. You have that parent, you have that teacher-pupil relationship, and that line was crossed many, 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 many times. So the two of them were more buddies than they were student pupil or student teacher. And so I think that's part of where that relationship went askew. The thing that still makes me wonder is Peterson supposedly and reportedly wanted to elevate Press Taylor as the OC. Well, Press Taylor is Carson Wentz's guy. And if Peterson wanted Carson out, or at least he wanted to go with Hurts, why elevate Carson's buddy as the OC? I think part of that is because Jalen Hurts was going to Peterson and going to Press Taylor and going to help me out here with the pronunciations, Stringali, who I think basically did nothing. I mean, talk about a paycheck, doing nothing and getting paid for it. The guy they picked up, I believe they picked him up from the Chargers. Who was the guy? He was fired. He was part of the whole offensive crew. Coach Morningway was also there. But I know, again, for a fact, Hurts went to all these guys, for input, for time, seeking out advice. Whereas Wentz, by the end of the season, almost by himself. And that's
I agree with you, Joe.
That's on Carson Wentz. So, now you have a new head coach coming in. He has to fix Wentz. But now, once again, Wentz has to turn around and address some issues. I distinctly remember, because the Eagles tried to shut me down, and with the January 2019 story. But here's something that a number of close friends of mine brought up, and it's very, very interesting. That even if he came out during that Super Bowl week for the embargoed story that the Eagles had hand-selected, specially selected 6 reporters to sit down in front of them. They certainly don't like me.
Of course not.
If it was so fake, if it was so false, then why call in your franchise quarterback during a time period when, he just doesn't want to be bothered. He doesn't want to deal with anything. Certainly doesn't want to deal with the media. If this was such a fake story, or as the number of teammates reported this in their tweets and social media posts, fake news or what have you. If it was so fake, then why pull in your starting quarterback to address it?
Well, he addressed it, and he agreed with what you said, Joe. I mean, he obviously didn't admit to all of it, but he basically took accountability for a lot of the things that you said in that report.
He did, and he deserves a lot of credit. I know for a fact, and again, this goes to the story I wrote in August about how now this is Wentz's team, and it was Wentz's team. They cleared the way. They got rid of Chris Long and let him go. certainly got rid of a large personality and a large voice in that locker room, Malcolm Jenkins. Going back to the way Peterson runs things. Well, now, Carson, here's the keys to the car. This is your team now. Let's be accountable. Let's show that leadership. And I have guys on the record and off the record talking to me about, hey, this is now Wentz's team. And what did he do? To be frank with you, he blew it. He blew it. Things started to deteriorate after the Washington game. He started to turn around, and a lot of the accountability that he started to assume, and it was more so accessibility that was the biggest thing. I think that was stirred from what I did in January 2019. But then he's admitted numerous times, he has a type A personality, and that type A personality certainly rose to the surface again, and he became I think I'm allowed to say this on a male body part. How about that? I'll use that terminology. We're smart, intelligent people. As people worded it to me in August, at least 4 of the guys that I originally spoke to, 2 of the 4 turned around and said, he's this, he's that, saying positive things. But at the end, 2 of the 4 turned around and he says, but Joe, he's still a blank. You fill in the part. You fill in the word.
Yeah, I follow.
You have a good idea of what I'm talking about now. So
do you think that, Joe, real quick,
I really want to play with this guy. Yeah.
Real quick, do you think that there will be a huge amount of turnover now that there's a new coach? Do you think a lot of players that maybe are from that, so for Carson to win back the locker room and things like that, I feel like there's a lot of players, and one in particular I know, and this is from my own particular sources, Jason Peters not being in that locker room is huge because Jason Peters was one of the few people that was 100% against Carson. And it's very obvious, and I don't want to quote exactly what I heard, but I will tell you that Jason Peters, I know, Alshon Jeffrey, I almost know. And Joe, you were spot on with this report when you said it. But my question would be, and I got Bill here too as a fellow Eagles fan. I'm going to let him ask you a question too, because I think that he is of the mindset of it being a lot of organizational issues. But do you think that there will be a huge amount of turnover of those players that were vocal against Carson? Because I know a lot of them told you when you did the report that they didn't want to be named by name because they know how much pull he has in the organization and they don't want to lose their
we found that out.
Yeah,
we found that out, didn't we?
Yeah, they lost that coach
last month. We found out just how much way Carson Wentz has. And as someone put it to me, 2 really reliable people put it to me, he has the line. I've said it publicly, and I've said it privately. He has the line to the bat phone, and that hasn't changed. So yeah, people are still very concerned.
A mindset of what?
Over the shoulders when they talk about this guy.
A line to
because someone put it to me very recently. If he can get an NFL head coach fired, what's he going to do to my sorry tale?
So I don't think he's an evil guy, though, Joe. I think that what Carson did not believe in Doug and did not believe in Mike, I think the whole thing that happened with Press Taylor, I think it's obviously a bad idea. I think the most success you've seen from Carson were with 2 guys that will get in his face and that were respected in the league. Even though Doug had won a Super Bowl, there's always been those whispers that Frank Wright, John DeFilippo, they orchestrated that offense. I know that's not, I understand that Doug had a very pivotal part, but the whispers around Philadelphia are as clear as can be. Did Frank Wright really win that Super Bowl? Was it Frank Wright and John DeFilippo's offense and the schemes? I'd like to get your feedback on that.
No.
Okay.
It was a collaborative effort. And again, it speaks to the strength of Doug Peterson. He did not go in, go in a china shop, knocking down everything my way, the highway, everybody follow me. No. And you saw that even if you remember the Super Bowl, it was Nick Foles that actually said, Philly, Philly.
Yeah.
Peterson thought for a second, you know what? Yeah, let's go with it. That's exactly what had happened. And that's a strength, I think, in my opinion. It's a strength of Doug Peterson. I mean, it was something there again. Everything's collaborative. I know for a fact the way he ran that locker. I know for a fact because I got it from the leaders themselves through their mouths.
Yeah.
How Peterson ran that show. And I think it's more of an indictment, obviously, as we're finding out more and more. It was more of an indictment of Wentz and what Wentz did and how Wentz carried himself. And again, the child in the playpen throwing all of his toys out because he hasn't gotten his way. And Daddy Jeff Lurie heard his son's wailing and crying, and let me scold the teacher. After all these wonderful things that the teacher's done for my son, I have to turn around and scold the teacher. And we saw what that scolding meant. I actually very recently heard something from, I'm not going to name the individual, but from a very good source of Eagles information for about a good 15 years, I would say, 15, 20 years. And he kind of collaborated something that we all heard, that Doug didn't want to come back. But you know what? Why am I putting myself through this aggravation, dealing with this jerk? Dealing with this stubborn guy. I'm at my wit's end with him. Why am I putting up with this aggravation? And I'm starting to believe more and more as I'm gathering some things right now myself, that Doug did indeed want it out, and was willing to turn around and put anything dumb that he could on the table to get out. You want Carson? Jeff and Howie? Here's Carson. Let me elevate Press Tower as the OC after one of the worst, if not the worst, performance of an Eagles starting quarterback, and I don't know how long. And Lurie and Howie look at each other and just say, what? You want out? Well, this is a good way to get out. Goodbye. I think Doug's, $5 million for the next 2 years, so he could sit back and scratch his belly and watch games and enjoy life on a yacht. And he don't have to, one individual he don't have to deal with is Carson Wentz. So maybe it was worth that aggravation. Maybe it's worth, getting clipped. And again, we know in terms of the world of the court of public opinion, who most, if not everyone in the Eagles in Double Valley have favored in this situation, and that's Doug Peterson. And the Eagles look bad, and guess what? The Eagles are going to be bad. They're going to be bad next season, possibly the season after that, and then maybe even the season after that. And poor Nick, who's taken over, may be the Eagles' version of Brett Brown. A bridge coach that's helped get this team back on the map, and then take off. Because I certainly tell you this, the Eagles were not counting on Doug Peterson to do what Doug Peterson did. Doug Peterson was supposed to be a bridge coach. He was supposed to be a guy that was going to help us transition from where we stand and the debacle this team is in after Chip Kelly to where we're going to go. And then suddenly in his second year, he wins a Super Bowl.
I follow everything that you're saying. Bill, do you have any feedback towards Joe? Because I know that you've been itching at this. I'm looking at you itching at it.
No, I'm just listening to take it all in. I mean, I'm glad he came on today. I mean, there was a report that came out on ESPN today that backs up some of the stuff he's saying, and it directly contradicts some of the stuff he's saying. So, it's I don't have any problem saying Carson played poorly this year. I mean, I don't think anybody can watch them play and say he played well. I do, some of the things you've even said on this phone call, I think is some of the stuff that frustrates most fans. It's, you don't want the guy to be type A. You don't want him to be the leader, whether you want him to take all the blame. Doug Peterson absolutely has accountability for not being here anymore. I don't think anybody, just as you can't agree that Carson didn't play well this year, I don't think you can honestly say Doug Peterson coached well this year.
There were times he didn't. But
there's a lot of times.
Again, and this is incredibly valid. And this is, I know that, again, I also know this for a fact. And this is where Doug screwed himself. And he did. Doug screwed himself in allowing Wentz to turn around and change many of those players on the line of scrimmage. Now, a quarterback's given a menu. Now, do I believe, this is one thing I'll push back against the McLean story. Do I believe he purposely did it out of disrespect for Doug Peterson? No. He did it because he had the freedom to do it. And consequently, a lot of the things that he called, a lot of the things he changed out of were mistakes that led to interceptions, that led to sacks and turnovers, that led to those things. So that's where Wentz has accountability. That's where Wentz has to have accountability. And that's not only obviously what I've heard. Go ahead.
No, and I agree with, I think there has to be accountability for Carson. But that ESPN report said today one of the biggest issues between Doug and Carson this year was Doug took that away from him. Doug took away from him being able to change everything at the line of scrimmage at the last second, something he was accustomed to doing. that was one of the big strifes that developed in their relationship. That Doug wouldn't.
And he took it away from him because he was constantly making mistakes.
It could be that. It could be, getting the ball in your hands.
No. It was that, and that's the reason why.
Well, again,
that's the reason why. He wasn't doing it out of disrespect for.
Oh no, I don't think it was disrespectful.
He was not seeing the field the way he should have been seeing the field, and he hadn't been seeing the field since the knee injury in 2017.
I mean,
that's
fair.
Confidence in Carson Wentz.
I disagree with that.
No, he's saying he hasn't seen the field the way that he's seen it in 2017. That's a fair comment.
His numbers in 2018 were better.
I followed. They're also 6 and 7 under him.
So that's Carson's fault again. This is what I mean.
6.
This is the tug of war we play with this team because everybody wants
his completion percentage was better in 2018. That is accurate.
It's if you want to put everything at his feet, then put everything at his feet. But then when he takes a crappy team to the playoffs for 2 years in a row,
I'm going to put 90% at his feet.
Yeah, see, I think
and this is from people in the league. Again, this is from people in the league that could have turned around and said, "Easy, start him off with stuff start him with easier things. Start him with those little wide receiver screens that everybody in the NFL does. Steps back, boom, just real quickie, right off the shoot to get that going, to get that confidence going, to stir some things in him, to stir some confidence in him."
I think that's the wrong approach, though, with Carson. So, especially someone that overcomplicates everything. When you start him with something easy and you put him behind the chains, exactly. I think that was the wrong approach, in my opinion. And like the part that I'll agree a little bit with Bill, what he's about to get into is, I think it's an organizational issue. And I think that the problem is Howie Roseman's got a freaking poster of Carson Wentz or plaque of Carson Wentz in his office. And you draft so many bad players and you make so many bad moves drafting. You really didn't give him too much to work with. He took a practice squad to the playoffs at the end of last year. And I think part of the reason why he did that was because the players that came in were ignorant, and not ignorant in the sense that that's a bad thing. They were ignorant to how much of an issue Carson Wentz might have been with veteran players. When you got Aguilar and you got Jeffrey off the field, you had a bunch of players that were playing hard because they were playing for a job. And that's why I thought that worked really well in 2019.
What does that say about here's a guy that again does not have a good track record here. What does that say about Alshon Jeffrey? Everybody knows he's the Jacina guy. Everybody knows.
Yeah, I agree.
So not only was he running his mouth 2 years ago about things going on in the locker room as an anonymous source, then he's absolutely disappeared on the field.
He plays harder for Jalen Hurts. That's what Joe said earlier, though.
Agree, but
you noticed that those players are playing harder.
There has to be accountability for that.
I agree with you.
You're a professional football player. If you're not on the field playing hard every play, that's a huge gripe everybody has with Deshaun Jackson. When it's a play that he knows he's the third option, and he's not getting the ball, he doesn't go off the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
He stands there. That's not okay. Jason Peters, no room to talk this year.
I know.
Rating-wise, efficiently, he's the worst left tackle in football. Cleveland Browns game was embarrassing. You get run over 8 times, you get your quarterback sacked 6 times, and then you sit in the locker room and say, he doesn't take accountability? Where's your accountability? Doug Peterson kept running him out there. How many times on this show did you say, I'll fix the offensive line right now or at least make it better?
Correct.
What happened the following week?
Jason
Peters was at left. Well, no, for the first 3 weeks, what happened? Jason Peters was at left tackle getting run over every other play.
I agree with you.
If you're not good, this is the part, and I've been consistent with this. Part of it is Carson, but part of it sure as hell was Doug. Part of it sure as hell was Howie's misses for the last 5 years. That this team's going to be in the situation it's going to be. And he's absolutely right, and we've been saying it since we started the show. They're going to be worse next year than they were this year. They're going to be terrible, and they're going to be terrible the year after that. There's a lot of bad contracts with guys that are over the hill that aren't good football players anymore. That's not getting cleared up in 1 year.
Joe, I appreciate you being on the phone with us this long. I want to ask you one last question, and I just want to kind of get your feedback on this, man. You were, once again, very respected report. I really appreciate taking the time and calling in the show.
Well, it's interesting it's respected now. It wasn't exactly respected. Well, here's the twist of it. It wasn't respected locally. I know for a fact it was respected nationally. I'm very close to Max Kellerman obviously through the boxing connection. And I'll go a step further.
Yeah.
So a few people know this, and now you guys will know it. Max listened to much of those tapes I played, much of the tapes I had. So Max knows where the bones are buried. Max knows. That's why when you hear Max on the air, that's why you hear him filled with such conviction because he listened and he heard, let's just say, we'll go as far as the three tiers of sources on the field, quote unquote, sources on the sidelines and above the field, a level above the field, quote unquote, and then sources even a level above that, quote unquote. So you're getting three tiers of feedback, many of which, by the way, some of them don't even know each other, and they're saying consistently the same things about Carson Wentz. That was then. Now, I mean, I had a bittersweet feeling. I mean, Jeff McClain, great job. You're the first to admit, great job. But, suddenly, you're that guy in the conference room that goes, guys, hey, what about 1, 2, 3 is the answer? And then you get the murmurs and, and then 2 minutes later, someone else turns around and says, hey, 1, 2, 3 is the answer. Great idea, Bob. That's the greatest thing I've heard since sliced bread. And you just kind of sit down, you kind of smile and you laugh and just,
Look, Joe, that was the reason we reached out to you. That was the reason we reached out to you because you 100.
So locally, people were not willing to accept that. But here's another thing that's a sticker, and again, it's the media game and the media game that people play. And the twist of the whole thing is that as I was working on that report, I kept on telling my editors at Philly Voice, "We got to get on the stick with this. We got to get on the stick with this. We got to get on the stick with this." Because I'm thinking if they're talking to me, they're going to be talking to other people. And there's no doubt in my mind that things that were told to me, other people knew. I mean, they might not have known a bigger picture or a whole picture. And Jeff McClain, I said, did a great job. He did it. He went into detail that I was not about to go into because I had a really good idea who Jeff spoke to from the details that were provided. If I provided details, I got a good feeling people would know exactly who I spoke to, and there was no way in hell I was giving any of those guys up. But my point with this whole thing is that people knew. There were suspicions there. And I'll go back even further. The first guy that knew about this before even I knew about it was Marcus Hayes. Marcus Hayes was sitting, and I know this for a fact, Marcus Hayes was sitting in the preseason conference room. The Inquirer staff, they all get together and they sit down and they map out, the big preseason stories, what the focuses are, and what to do. And Marcus brought up some of the very things that I was told that I eventually wrote about. Marcus was saying something's growing here, and Marcus got shut down. Shut it down by the editorial department, shut it down by some of the beat guys of the Eagles going into that 2018 season. Guys, we're going to get burned. Something's going to happen. Somebody's going to turn around and come up with this stuff. I'm telling you. And lo and behold, some meatball-shaped little bald-headed schmuck wound up coming up with it.
Joe, don't listen. I'll tell you. Let me just get your opinion on this before we let you go because we got to move on. But I appreciate so much you calling in. What do you think the odds are that Nick Sirianni and this new head coaching staff can turn it around for Carson Wentz? If you were to break it down on a scale 1 to 10 or 1 to 100, however you want to do it, what do you think the odds are that this coaching staff can turn it around for Carson? Because I think that's why they were hired.
You know what? I'm going to say 7 out of 10. I'm going to say there's a good chance they turn around Carson. There's the sticker. He's 28. You got to turn 29, 30, 31. He can get it right. Carson Wentz could turn into even. I don't think he's ever going to be 2017. But I keep on using the example of Matt Stafford. He could be Matt Stafford, who I think we all agree is a productive NFL quarterback. He could be Matt Stafford. But even if you're getting the optimum Carson Wentz, we'll go as far as even if you get the 2017 version of Carson Wentz, there's the sticker, as Mike was picking up. Here you have a repaired quarterback in a team that's in grave disrepair. So you're dealing with him at 29, 30, 31, and who knows, maybe even at 32. You're dealing with him wasting 3 to 4 prime years of his career on a loser, on a decaying team that he has nothing around him like he had in 2017. And guess what? That's a shame for Carson Wentz. That's a shame for what he could possibly go through. So even if you fix him, the shame of it is you're still screwing the guy. Because granted, he could be this, that, and the other thing, but if he has no one to throw to, no one to protect him, and on top of that, you have a defense that's in a shambles, so there's no one to really stop the other guys. This thing's going to be a mess. So he could be the next coming of Joe Montana.
The only thing I'll push back on that.
A quarterback that had amazing qualities in Archie Manning for years was in a team that was in constant disarray. And right now, that's the Eagles. Right now, the Eagles have a hell of a lot of holes to fill. And even if this guy does get back, it's still going to be a mess.
My only pushback on that, Joe.
His prime years could be wasted. My
only pushback on that is that this is exactly what we heard at the end of 2015. We heard it's a 3-4 year rebuild, what Chip Kelly did with these contracts and with everything that happened. And that's my only pushback. And listen, I'm going to be the optimist. I'm always the optimist when it comes to the Eagles. I want this. Listen, my dad passed away in July of 2019, and I have an Eagles urn. An Eagles urn with my dad's remains in it.
Okay.
That's how big of an Eagles fan I am. Yeah. So I'm going to be the optimist, and I'm gonna hope that this turns around for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I'm gonna look back at that Chip Kelly to Doug Peterson, the mess that we were in, and what we became in just 2 years. So
the difference between those messes is much of that same core group: Kelsey, Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks. Salamano wasn't here, but at that time Wisniewski was here. You had a far healthier, a far closer to his prime Jason Peters. That infrastructure was there. The talent, there was talent there. Look at these guys now. Lane coming off an injury. Brandon Brooks coming off back-to-back injuries. Kelsey with far more wear and tear on him. Jason Peters just absolutely shot over the last 2 years. There's nothing in front of him. I mean, think about this. If I'm talking about Isaac Salamalo, who's a decent, serviceable O-lineman, that's not a hell of a lot to build around.
I think Isaac Salamalo is your next center.
With guys that are stretching the field. There was a far greater infrastructure, far stronger infrastructure in terms of talent, that team than this team. And remember, the core group of this team is 3 to 4 years older, a hell of a lot more wear and tear on this group, where this group really needs to be torn down and built back up again as a group.
I completely agree with you, Joe. Joe, thank you so much for hopping on the show. I appreciate it, and thank you so much for all your reporting.
Okay, thank you, guys. I appreciate the time.
Take care. How about that, Joe Santoliquito? It was a very good. I love listening to some of the sources that he had, and I felt like it was really, really interesting to a lot of things that he brought to the table.
I mean, you know my feeling on sources, so
I get it, but at the end.
No, I mean, look, obviously he talks to people, but again, every single one of them is anonymous, so it's, yeah, I mean, it's, again, there's a lot of it I agree with, there's a lot of it I disagree with. Like I said, that ESPN report came out today randomly. I don't know why it came out today, but there was a lot of stuff.
Because we had our show, Bill.
There was a lot of stuff in that report that directly contradicts things he just said, with Carson, with the way the room was, the way he was handled, his relationship with Doug. So again, I mean, truth's probably somewhere in the middle. And again, it's, Carson needs to take responsibility for the things he's done wrong. But I mean, he even summed it up at the end. I mean, it was Carson, but at the end he was like, look what he's around. But again, nobody's, Well,
I've been on that boat with you.
We didn't bring it up the entire interview.
What? We talked about his weapons. We talked about how he's drafting. 100%.
For like 2 seconds. It's a huge part of the problem.
My point is, I wanted to hear Joe's full perspective on everything that was going on. He was the original reporter of it, 2019. So I just wanted to get his full perspective. We could talk about that. We know that. But I wanted to get his perspective on the entire landscape of the Eagles organization. Obviously, he has very solid connections throughout the Eagles organization. So, Cottrell, from being a Cleveland Browns fan, and before we move on, because we got to move on, what was your thought process on the things that Joe was saying on the call?
I mean, I guess as a Philadelphia Eagle fan, I would be somewhat optimistic, but in a sense, I would also be a little terrified just because if stuff doesn't go Carson's way, right away, and he is, this issue in the locker room and people don't have his respect, and, you're sitting on Jalen Hurts essentially, and you saw how the team rallied around him at the end of last season. As a new head coach, I mean, that'd give Nick Sirianni a lot of problems starting off. So that'd be my one biggest worry with that. But at the same token, hopefully you guys, you said Alshon plays better. Hopefully he's not on the roster for you guys next year. Hopefully these O linemen, Brooks and Johnson can come back healthy, and I think that could play a big factor in it as well. That can get, Carson Wentz's confidence back up, and he doesn't feel like he only has 2 seconds before he's, about to get his head knocked off. So, I mean, I see how you could be optimistic, but there's a lot of unknowns there as well.
That's fair. Let's move on to the NFC or NFL divisional or conference championship recap. We got about 10 minutes left, so I want to at least get into both these games, which I thought were both good football games, and one of them went exactly how I thought it would go. Well, not exactly how I thought it would go. The other one didn't. The interesting one to talk about is Green Bay, Tampa Bay. I guess we'll start with Kansas City, Buffalo. Is there anything that you've seen in that game that you felt was unexpected? And is Kansas City just going to run? Well, we'll talk about the Super Bowl next week, but what did you see from Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes coming off the injury?
The one thing that like really, well, I guess two things that surprised me was, one, how well Patrick Mahomes moved. I wasn't necessarily concerned about the concussion.
Toby with a walk-off. Sorry, Toby just hit a walk-off.
They did.
Let's go.
I was more so concerned with the foot and how he was going to move. You knew, the arm strength is there. You knew he wasn't going to have any problem reading the defense. So I didn't have any concerns with that. But seeing how he moved and how well he moved, it was a sight to see. And the other thing that, like, I guess kind of surprised me is how well the Kansas City Chiefs secondary did on covering those Buffalo receivers. Granted, Cole wasn't 100%, but they did a great job on Stephon Diggs pretty much the whole entire game. And for the most part, they did a great job on Josh Allen. So, keeping him contained, and he didn't have any crazy runs until pretty much late in the fourth quarter. So those are the two things that really surprised me in that one. But I think I was pretty confident that the Chiefs would roll.
Same. I was confident they would roll. I was confident they would win.
No, I mean, that game, nothing really surprised me. That game kind of played out how we all thought. I mean, Buffalo was just going to run out of bullets, and that's what was going to happen. Allen had a pretty good game. But again, I'm not surprised about the secondary because that was the one thing we were all worried about. Buffalo's a one-dimensional team. They can't run the football unless it's Josh Allen scrambling. So, Spagnuolo came out. He just dropped in the zone all game. He's like, I got 8 guys to cover 4 of your guys. You can dig and dunk and go underneath if you want, but you're not going to beat us over top. You're not going to get Diggs into the game the way they want to. And then if you want to try to start running the ball, then maybe I'll come out of it. And Buffalo never did. And it's one of those weird things. They pass block very well, and they can't run block to save their lives. It's definitely two different things, but it's crazy to have that much of a difference between the two things. That's their big thing for next year. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if they're convinced Moss is the guy that's going to come back off injury. Doesn't seem like they have a lot of confidence in Singletary, and I don't know what they're going to do with the line. But Josh Allen's the real deal. But again, you can't give up possessions against Kansas City. They had 4th and goal twice, and they settled for field goals, which I thought was huge. Not that was like waving the white flag, but it was, again, Kansas City went down right after one of them had scored, and it's just a 4-point swing on the scoreboard, but it's a huge momentum swing. Buffalo kind of dropped back into like kill us by 1,000 paper cuts defense. Didn't really play that much man, played a lot of zone, but couldn't get any pressure on Mahomes. And when that happens, I mean, that guy is he's just going to tear you apart, and he did. And when they did get close to him, he just ran. It's like I don't think anybody's surprised with the final score of that game.
We'll obviously get into Super Bowl predictions next week, so I'm going to leave that alone. But Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce did exactly what I think they were doing on offense. That offense is just unbelievable as a unit, and the defense does enough to get them on the field and is opportunistic. The game I really want to get into, and I'm not going to get too far into Kansas City, Buffalo. The game I really want to get into is Green Bay, Tampa Bay. There's a lot of different things that happened in that game that just I still feel like Green Bay is a better football team. And
got it right.
Tampa Bay, what do you mean got it right? You picked Tampa?
I did.
All right. I still feel like Green Bay is a better football team. And I watched that game, and I look at it like unit after unit, and people online talking like the GOAT and Tom Brady, and once again I watched that football game, and I don't say Tom Brady won that football game.
Correct.
Threw 3 interceptions, and he threw like 3 basically like throw. And honestly, the ball Godwin caught, I thought was going to get picked too. The 40, 50-yarder where he basically pushed a Green Bay D-back off the ball and caught it, which was an incredible play.
I mean, one of them definitely wasn't his fault. The second one was definitely miscommunication. The only one that was really bad was the one he just chucked up. It was like 39. I mean, it acted like a punt. It's not the end of the world either way on that one.
I thought the one to Mike Evans was bad. Mike Evans is a huge target, and he had space between him and the defender, and Tom Brady just missed him. I get it. The tip ball, makes it easy for the DB, but
went off both of his hands.
It went off of his both of his fingertips, and Mike Evans is huge. That's a bad ball by Tom. I think
gotta catch it.
If you get your fingertip, so that's the one thing I do hate, and for the most part, I do agree with it. If you get your hands on the ball, you're supposed to catch it. But at the same time, I'm going to try and catch everything. But if I'm, a 6'5" receiver and I jump and I put my hands up and it smacks my fingertips and it's deflected for an interception, I'm not supposed to catch those. Get the ball down lower. I would get it if the window was a little bit tighter. But Tom Brady, it was like, 3-4 yards of separation. And Tom Brady missed the throw.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he's gonna miss throws. I don't think he's the number one reason they won the game, but I mean, he's on a good football team. I mean, it was the exact opposite in New England. I mean, they had really good defenses and terrible offenses, and he played out of his mind. I mean, that's part of it. And you could say, I mean, they won. I mean, they're a good football team. That defense is playing well. I mean, if you can go to Lambeau and beat Aaron Rodgers, I mean, you can't not give them their credit. They outplayed Green Bay. Would they, if they played 4 more times, would Green Bay win 3 of those 4? Probably, maybe. You never know. But the one game where it mattered, they went up there and they took care of business and they won. That defense at times made Aaron Rodgers look very ordinary in that game. And, that's all the credit in the world to them, and they weren't even at full strength. So,
3 things I want to point out on Green Bay's end. The 3 things I want to point out on Green Bay's end. 1, I'll get into Kevin King shortly. Kevin King, I'll just start there. He was, to me, the biggest issue in the game. The second thing that drove me nuts, and we all give Aaron Rodgers all the credit in the world. I'm a huge Aaron Rodgers guy. You can't go over to your defense and say, get me the ball back after you get it within 5. And they get you the ball back 3 times with a chance to win the game.
Yep.
And he didn't do it.
Nope.
And then the third thing is, we got to talk about whatever. You guys can disagree with me. Is Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones lost the ball, and then I think his ego is hurt more than his chest. I really just don't believe.
I don't know if it was a chest. I kind of agree with Cottrell. If you watch the first one, I think he was messed up. He got hit way hard on the first one, and I don't know if he was concussed or he got his bell rung or whatever, but he didn't look right after that. He had 1 or 2 decent runs, and then he had that one in the flat when he got popped. But it looked like he turned around, and he was just like, oh, he almost flinched like he was gonna get hit. And again, dude, if you watch that in slow mo, that dude's helmet is right on the ball. You literally can't draw it up any better. I'm not putting that solely on the feet of Aaron Jones. I feel like a lot of other running backs would fumble the ball the same way on that play.
I don't put that on his feet. If you fumble the ball, you fumble the ball. That's not the issue. The issue is, now my chest hurts. I'm not coming back in the game. I almost think that was a bruised ego. I almost think that was like,
Careful.
Hey, listen.
You're getting into you-know-who territory here.
You can call it. Well, listen, if you're going to call it one way, call it the other.
I'm with you. I'm just saying, I don't know. I don't know the specifics. I think there's something else wrong with him.
And I especially think, game on the line, you got a chance to go to a Super Bowl. I don't think it had anything to do with his ego. I'm sure in his career, not even necessarily NFL, but at some point, during his playing career, he's fumbled the ball before and had to make up for it. I mean, that's what great players do. And Aaron Jones he had a great season this year. And I think if he could have helped this team, fight back and win that game, he would have been out there on the field. I just don't think that he was healthy enough to go.
I mean, part of it could be, too, the floor just wasn't going to go back to him after 2 fumbles.
That could have been it, too.
They could row with Dylan, and he just didn't want to throw him under the bus, especially, and just be like, oh, he was hurt, he couldn't come back in.
Why not? He's a free agent.
Because maybe they're trying to bring him back, bro.
I don't know. I don't think they are after drafting Dylan in the second round.
LaFleur doesn't seem like a guy that is just going to, not after some of the calls he made, he could throw anybody on the bus anyway. But
speaking of that,
I was gonna just real quick.
Whoa, let's be careful.
Packers drafting. I mean, I don't necessarily think that their drafting is indicative of the moves they're gonna make, because they drafted Jordan Love and he's probably gonna ride the bench for another 2 years. So,
well, it depends. It depends on what Aaron does when he's finished sulking.
Let's get into You Gotta Be Kidding Me.
All right.
Cottrell, give us a start.
All right, so mine's going to be a little bit different this week. Normally, we put players on blast. This week, I got a lot of respect for Bills receiver Cole Beasley. I don't know if you guys heard or not, but he was playing in all their playoff games with a broken leg, and that's incredible to think about. As a receiver, obviously you need your legs. Obviously any position on the NFL, you need your legs, but
got no legs.
Playing receiver with a broken leg and being effective. Like, it wasn't like he was just out there as a decoy. I mean, he had like 6, 7, 8 catches in the AFC Championship game. So, Cole Beasley, you got to be kidding me, man. That's incredible toughness.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
Shally.
I am going for the aforementioned Matt LaFleur. Season on the line, trip to the Super Bowl on the line, 4th and goal. You have the almighty Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, and you choose to kick a field goal and give the ball back on the 25 to however you want to slice it, pretty much unquestionably the best quarterback in the history of the game. Knowing if he gets 1 first down, your season's pretty much over. I just don't know how you make that decision. I feel like he let his football team down. I'm sure there was a lot of questions in the locker room after that game. I know the media crushed him. He kind of cried about it. Didn't really answer, kind of got defensive about it. I just don't get that play call. I mean, there's nothing to defend it. We talked about it before. You nailed it on the head, and then it was funny. I watched on ESPN the next morning, and they say the same exact thing. You go for it on
I'm wired, bro. You have me tapped.
You go for it on 4th down there. Worst case scenario, you don't get it. Tom Brady gets the ball on the 8. It's a completely different situation. It's a completely different play calling situation that it is, kick the field goal, touchback, we'll go to the 25. We don't get it. We just punt, and you're all the way down. You're at your 20 or 25 with 20 seconds to go, and you got to score. You gave all the power and all the leverage to Tampa Bay. I don't know if he looked in a book and it was one of those stupid analytic books, which I cannot stand, about, do this instead of this and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't work. Sometimes you just have to go with what works and what's common sense. You should have went for it there. Instead, you're not playing the Super Bowl next week. You're going to be at home shoveling snow. So for this week, it's Matt LaFleur for me.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
Toby.
It's funny. Matt LaFleur was on my list, and it was one of the guys that I was thinking about. But the more and more I watch that game, I've been a big proponent of Green Bay's secondary. And I've talked about Jair Alexander being the most underrated cornerback in the league, and he had two interceptions, and he's really blown up.
He had a great game.
He did. Who didn't have a good game? Kevin King. The first touchdown of the game, he missed time to jump, and Mike Evans caught a touchdown over him. Okay, that happens. It's okay. What shouldn't happen is at the end of the first half, there's 6 seconds left, and you let Scotty Miller get behind you for a touchdown to make it 21-10 at the half. That is awful, atrocious. You cannot let that happen. They were finding where Kevin King was, and they were targeting any player he was sticking. And I'll go even further with it. Last play of the game, the play that you can stop them, you can get the ball back. Brady threw the ball, and it looked to me like it was 10 yards off base. And you can argue all you want. They let it go all game, and the holds, and this, and that, all that bullshit. You want to be real about it? You can't hold a receiver's jersey like that in front of a referee and expect it not to get called. That would have been St. Louis, New Orleans all over again.
He switched hands.
Yeah.
That's the best part of it all. He had such a good hold on it. He went from his left hand to his right hand and held on.
He had an atrocious football game. And, you go to Aaron Jones, you go to Matt LaFleur, you go to Aaron Rodgers, but nobody played worse than Kevin King. And for that, this week, Kevin King.
Come on, you gotta be kidding me.
To further your point even more, I don't know if you read this yet. when they came off the field on that third down, when they were going to punt and they called the timeout, Brady said something to Arians on the way by and said, I want to go for it. Like, I want to go at him, and pretty much called that play. And then Arians put the offense back on the field, and they literally ran the play Tom wanted to run to go right at him. Like, I don't know. They must have saw something on film during the course of that week to get ready for them, but they thought they could go directly at him. Because up until that, he had a good year. So
great year. They were talked about as the best cornerback tandem in football.
But whatever it was, because I remember watching it too. Like, Tom actually sat on the bench, and then somebody turned around and yelled at him, and he jumped back up real quick and put his helmet back on, and they called that play. Like, that play was designed specifically for Scotty Miller on that route against King. Like, it's crazy.
The fourth down play was actually short out, and then they had the shot to take the deep shot. The short out was against Kevin King, though. So you're right about that, but the next play was actually first down. They had thrown like a little out pattern to get the first down, and then the next play was
the touchdown play, yeah.
So the fourth down play, they called him off the bench. They did throw an out pattern at Kevin King, and then after that, they threw a touchdown. That out pattern, I'm not going to beat him up. I'm not going to eat his lunch over it. It's fine. Right. What I'm going to eat his lunch over is that Scotty Miller play. You can't let him get behind you with 6 seconds left. You know, if they kick a 55-yard field goal or 52-yard field goal to end the half, you're down 17-10. It's a different game. Okay. Great show. Great guest. Had a lot of fun. Final comments, because I have one.
I got just two about both of your you got to be kidding me. One, I said this like kind of jokingly but kind of serious. If I was Green Bay, I would have the team president, GM, whatever. I would have been on my way back home from that game, and I would have been thinking like, maybe we should deactivate Matt LaFleur's key card just for a couple days, have him thinking about that decision. Like, I don't know if you're going to be our guy for the future, because we only got Aaron Rodgers for like 1 or 2 more years here. So our window is closing rather quickly.
People have been fired for us.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I want to get to about yours, Gene, is that while Kevin King, that play is completely inexcusable, I'm putting some blame on the Packers DC. Why are you running cover 1 with 6 seconds left with no safety help for Kevin King?
It's so funny because it was like they're trying to prevent the field goal.
Yeah. Like, what are you doing there? Why don't you have – I mean, I understand, you don't want them to get in field goal range, but at the same time, like, I'm having at least 2, maybe 3 guys back there. I'm in prevent. You're not scoring a touchdown over my head with 6 seconds left. That can't happen.
When they called press, I don't think he was like, hey, it's okay if you let Scotty Miller get behind you by 10 yards to catch the ball.
No.
Like,
I get that. But at the same time, Scotty Miller is one of the fastest receivers in the NFL, and Kevin King didn't play it right at all. Like, I don't want to take that away from him.
Well, that's what I mean. Like,
but cover 1 there is
Kevin King
inexcusable.
has to know that is literally the only thing he cannot let happen.
Right.
And he let it happen. So yeah, if you're playing press, like, how fast the guy is, you can't give him a free release, and then as he's running behind you, then turn around and look and be like, oh crap, he actually threw the ball. And then you turn back and Miller's 4 yards behind you.
I just think it would have made his job a lot easier if you have a safety over top, and then at that point you don't have to worry about it.
Final comments, Bill?
No, I got nothing this week. I think it's
I got one.
We got stuff.
You see this merch right now? We just got our first order in.
We got good stuff.
I love it. That hoodie's on. They're rocking the hoodies. I'm walking the dry fit. I love it. So yeah, Phil, I've seen you 16 times. It's not even been 2 weeks, which is the exact time for the merch. Which Friday will be 2 weeks. This was the original order that I placed that I paid for people on the show before, so we can try to get a feel for it. The orders for merch I posted on the Facebook page should hopefully be in this Friday, and if they're in this Friday, I'll get them shipped out then. If not, they're going to be early next week. There's mail issues all across the globe. I promise everyone will get their merch, and that'll be that. But what I do want to say is check it out. We're starting T-shirt sales as of today. We're going to put another order in this Friday at noon. If you guys want dry fits, T-shirts, or hoodies, reach out. Wire2Wire, we have a Venmo, and we will take care of you. Other than that, it's this week 16, and we had a great time. This is Wire2Wire signing out. Go Sixers. Toby.